and welcome to today's episode. I am joined by Jackie Mulligan. She is the CEO and foundress of Reform. And Reform is a Catholic wellness apostolate. And I first heard about it a few years ago through a friend of mine who was like, Val, you gotta learn more about this. You gotta be participate. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, if you're just desiring to just find balance in your life, to find healing and just understanding of your body and how it all integrates together, then you should look into Reform. And so I signed up. In the process of going through it online. It took me a couple years, but in the process, I've just learned more about Jackie, and I've just been blown away by her passion for the wholeness and healing of those that she encounters. And so today is just an opportunity for you to just learn more about her story, learn more about Reform, and to consider participating. So without further ado, Jackie, welcome and thank you for being part of this.
Valentina, thank you for having me. Thank you for such a beautiful witness to Reform and to the Lord as well. It's a joy to be here.
Well, thank you. And so can you just share a little bit about yourself and just your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. I feel so grateful to have founded Reform. I think it was a gift that was entrusted to me from the Lord. I know it was. And it really started in a journey to my own reformation, my own conversion. I was born and raised Catholic and practiced the faith all throughout my life. But it wasn't until I was postgraduate and living on the other side of the country from my family and really had this opportunity as an individual to question who I am and what is this all about. And as I was immersed in the world and working and having already achieved a lot of my goals and pursued lots of different credentials and degrees, I just sort of had this feeling that there was something more that I hadn't done and that it was beyond just something that I could accomplish. And I think, Valentina, in my heart, I knew that it was the Lord. I just wasn't really sure how to get closer to him because I thought I was doing the things that you're supposed to do. I prayed and I went to Mass on Sundays. And so my whole world really changed for the better when I met the Eucharistic Lord in adoration. And it was there that I met myself and I met the Lord and I met me, my truest identity. And that is his beloved daughter. I loved in our opening prayer today, you said the apple of his eye. And that is so true. And so I started to live from a place of, well, what if I lived in a way that was reflective of my being the apple of the Lord's eye and knowing who I am and whose I am, and that I am not my degrees or my failures or my health or the way I look. I'm his, and all those things are important, but they're not everything. And so, yeah, that's just a little background of how Reform was born, essentially understanding that to be well, we need Christ at the center of our lives. We need Christ at the center of our well-being. And from there, we can pursue all the parts of health that he gives to us through the gift of nutrition and movement and sleep and stress management and people, community, all though from the lens of a relationship with him primarily.
Gosh, I love how you said earlier that you encountered him and you found yourself. And I think that's really, really key because, like you said, it's very easy to search for identity in all of those things that you mentioned: work, our health, and just even the people around us, like our vocation. But those things don't satisfy ultimately. And the Lord just is just drawing us deeper, deeper into himself because he wants to like reorientate our focus towards him.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you, like you said, you encountered the Lord in a deeper way. And so then how did it go from that to like, I'm going to start a company about this?
Well, I was already very well versed in entrepreneurial land, in that I had run national sales for a supplement company, but I had a teaching and business background. So I sort of merged all of these things together, and also had finished a certificate in nutrition and consulting. And so I had this desire to help people naturally. I have always been empathetic and really easily able to journey with people. I lead with my heart, certainly. And so it just sort of felt like, once I knew that to be well, we needed the Lord in our lives, and to consider his place in our lives, it was almost like I couldn't ignore it. So as I was helping people with their health in general, I I knew that I wanted to bring him into it. I didn't know that how I was going to do it. I didn't even feel like I knew how. I felt like I was just getting introduced to who he was and who I was in him. And so it actually had to start with me. Like, I had to reform my own life, Valentina, before I could do anything else. And that was something that I wanted at first, as a bit of a type A perfectionist recovering one. I wanted to sort of like overhaul my life all at once. It was like, oh yes, this is true. And I want to cultivate a healthy soul, and I want to go to heaven, and I want all my life to reflect that. I want to move into this way. And the Lord was so generous and patient with me, and sort of revealing, well, that's great, but we have to reform all these other places. And so there was some pruning, there was, weeding my garden. There was a lot of releasing, a lot of surrender, a lot of letting go of old health patterns, of old thought patterns, of relationships, of striving. Yeah, there's a lot that I had to unlearn, even about health. And everything really started to change when I started to consider how I would live if I allowed him to inform all these different parts of my life. And that happened, it seems like it happened really fast. In that time, it felt slow. It was a few years of overhauling my life, but certainly I did reform into a new being in him. And with that, it was just sort of an extension of who I was. And so it was natural that the people I was working with, it wasn't like I sort of was forcefully bringing the Lord into their lives, but I was inviting them to consider the Lord in their lives. And it didn't matter what their background was. It was just something where I wanted people to pay attention to their body and their soul, and something bigger than them, to get out of the circular cycle of the rat race, or the modern way, where we try to find ourselves in the world and we just stay really hungry there. So I will say in short, that I do believe that the more I invited the Lord into my practice, and the more I reformed my own life, he kept on opening doors. And so it was like these blind steps forward, trusting in him, but also moving closer to him, where he would open the doors to sort of just lead me to wherever he wanted me next.
So then that leads me to another question. So you said you started out with reforming yourself, but the Lord led you through that journey. If you don't mind just sharing some specifics of that, and then I'll ask you my other question.
Sure. It started off with a daily holy hour during the season of Lent several years ago. And my older sister had asked me if I would consider doing it, as she sort of saw my attention being grasped by the Lord in a particular way. And so it felt like a lot to ask. But I was right next to a perpetual adoration chapel, and I thought I'm up for the challenge. And I was so captivated, because I realized, as I was sitting before him, that I really didn't know the Lord. And I actually didn't know him. I didn't even know really how to approach him. It's like this distant relationship. And it was like, I was so humbled, because I was a well-formed Catholic who had a really healthy prayer life, but I didn't realize until I was in his presence, where I was shattered in the best way. Like, wait, that really is Jesus. And like I get to spend time with him. And then it was like, well, I don't want to be anywhere else. Why would I want to be anywhere else? So in the best way, he just crushed me with his mercy and his love. And I started to understand love in a different way. I understood him in a different way. I understood everything. It was like my whole lens just changed. And it takes some time to sit there and like relearn everything that you thought you knew, and to reflect on decisions I needed to make and decisions I had made in the past. And um so it was a lot of time and adoration, and it was just like I just needed to be with him. I just needed to just stay at his feet. And St. Mary Magdalene gave me that permission. It was this beautiful saint who just let me mirror her and like just stay there with him. There's no better place that you could be. And yeah, so that was part of it. And then that led to daily mass, and then from there my prayer life got really strong, and my life began to fully be oriented toward the Lord. But it was in Eucharistic adoration that it all began, and a consistency with it.
Yeah, gosh, and I just love that, having just you meditating on Saint Mary Magdalene, and I was thinking about her in prayer the other day, and how I was wondering, like, why is it that she was the one that Jesus appeared to after the resurrection? Like, why her first, you know? And then I just praying about it, just thinking, was like, well, she was faithful. Like, she was faithful in Calvary, at Calvary. She was faithful after his death. Like, and so it's like almost like, for your faithfulness, like, here's this great gift to be the first to see me.
I think another thing to consider there is that also I think he knew that she could recognize him. At first, of course, she mistaken him, right? But it was because I think that he knew she was the apostle to the apostles, and that she would evidently believe that it was him.
No, that is a good point. Yeah. Oh. And so, okay, so going back to your journey, so you had this encounter with the Lord and continue to have this encounter through the holy hours, through your daily mass. And then as you were started journeying with people, what were some of the common threads that you found in their lives?
I think the most common thread was stress management, and this overwhelm of the way of the world, and this really honest desire to slow down, to live differently, to have more space for the Lord, but almost this like nobody else is doing this. This feels really radical, but I know that this is how we're supposed to live. And so a lot of times, Valentina, people will say, wow, what you're doing is radical. And I'm like, no, no, the way the world is living is radical. Like, it's not that radical to allow the Lord to take primacy in your life and your heart. That's how we were made. And so I think the most common thing is that everybody is burnt out, everybody is tired, everybody is overwhelmed. And I say that with a lot of compassion, because that was really something that triggered my curiosity of like, I was in my mid-20s and feeling burnt out, and I'm like, how am I supposed to live like this? Like, life isn't even hard yet. And so just really feeling a little bit hopeless, and understanding that people definitely feel that way. And it's almost like they're survival, they're in survival mode. And so that's probably the most common thread. But what's beautiful about that is that there is a knowingness and a hunger for something different, and they know that it's the Lord. And so just even that desire gives him the window to come in and join us. And I think that the most beautiful witness for me is to watch people hand back the keys to the Lord, and let him go back into the driver's seat and really lead them, and say, okay, Lord, these are the areas I want to reform. And it's usually nutrition or functional movement. And he's like, well, we're going to start off with some space and some stress management. And we're going to get things rightly ordered back on me with faith. And then we'll move over to the other pillars. So though we do target lots of areas that we've been taught are what define health, like nutrition and like functional movement, often those are the ones we get to almost last, because we have to reorient and focus first on the Lord, get our footing, refocus our lens, and then approach the pillars in a rightly ordered way.
So with that, can you share a little bit, just as an overview, like what is reform and as you would describe it, and then specifically, what are the nine pillars? You've touched on a few of them, but just for those listening who may not be familiar.
Sure, sure. So, we're a Catholic wellness apostolate, so we help people redefine their health, looking at the state of the body and the soul together. And so we look at the whole person and reframe health through the lens of nine wellness pillars. And so the Lord is at the center, and so faith and our relationship with the Lord really informs everything at Reform. And then we have nutrition, sleep, stress management, functional movement, play, space, community.
Those are good.
We focus on all these different areas of health. And I think it's so important that we look at all these different areas and make them equal, in the sense that play is just as important as stress management, and that nutrition is just as important as your relationship with other people. And now there might be seasons in your life where there needs to be a focus on one pillar over the others. But we need to make sure that faith is central and that faith is informing the others, because sometimes what happens, Valentina, is that people will have the center of their health, instead of it be their faith as their compass, they'll have nutrition or a relationship or their body composition, and that becomes their idol, that becomes their god. And the thing that is so disorienting about that is that that is not sustainable. That is always going to be changing. And so the one thing that's not going to change and that is really going to help feed our why is the Lord. And so we define our pillars using the shape of a monstrance, since Reform was inspired and born in adoration. And so it's from there that all the pillars are then informed, and the pillars are the same size to help people really see that, yes, sleep is as important as what you eat, and making time to play is as important as you moving your body. And so it is, it's something to sort of visually help people see, but also to see the areas of their life that might be imbalanced. And so it's a journey that we offer through foundational courses that allow people to go through the nine wellness pillars, learn our best practices, our tools, but really how to create a lifestyle that allows the pillars to be present daily, weekly, monthly, so that there is balanced, but there's also a forward motion toward health and also toward heaven, which is really the goal.
Yeah. And so actually, gosh, and I love that the way you described it, that it's each of those pillars are equally as important. So like sleep is as important as prayer. I mean, not prayer, play. And then just faith being the center. And you're so right in that when any of those become the idol, we just sort of fall apart as a people, as a society. And we see that so often. And so, in your life, what has been one of the pillars that you have found just tremendous fruit in as you've journeyed through your own reform?
Wow, I love this question. I don't think anybody's asked me this. Certainly faith. I think like I think it's one we take for granted, in that it's the cornerstone, and so we think that, well, it's here. But the deeper I grow in faith and the more I prioritize the Lord, the better life gets. And that humbles me. I can't say it without feeling such strong emotion, because we have such a gift that the depth of our faith is just endless. And so it is, for me, when I get to really quote unquote work on the pillar of faith, it's such a gift. What does not come as naturally for me is play. And so it is, it's difficult for me to implement play. I love to play. I have nieces and nephews who are the best. I have a dog. I have sports that I like to play. I am creative. And so there's no shortage of a desire to play. It just doesn't come as natural. And I think it's because I was such an achiever and striver, and it was almost like play needed to be earned in a sense. And so I know that that's not true, and I know how essential it is. And so, I think I've tried to more recently, Valentina, like combine those two pillars, which is such a gift, and really allow myself to be playful in the sense of having like a childlike demeanor. And so it's like I'm combining that with faith in that I'm relying on the Lord more of like, okay, Lord, what are you going to do about this? And, remaining in a beautiful poverty, but in a way that is reliant on him and knowing his goodness and allowing myself to be a little bit more lighthearted, knowing who he is, knowing, as you said, that we're the apple of his eye. And so those are two pillars right now that I'm continuing to focus on.
Okay. So I wholeheartedly relate to that. Like, just thinking about the pillars, I haven't gone through that part of the course yet, but play is for sure the one I could just say that, it does not come naturally to me. My husband is very good about being playful, and I have to like when he does, I'm like, oh wait, yes, I could be playful too.
Yes.
Like, why am I so serious? But again, it's just that almost type A personality of just wanting to get things done that it's like I have to give myself permission to just just be playful. Yeah. So,
and I think that there is sort of like this sense of, time sometimes that like when we have a to-do list and we want to get things done, it's almost like we forget that we can be present and that like, we need to be present in order to do so. And there is, when you think about it, Valentina, like when you're playing, you mentioned you have a 10-month-old and so I'm certain that you do get to play often. You have to be fully present. And so it's a real gift to be able to even make the things that we don't usually make playful. And so sometimes I'll, be writing something and it's, if I catch myself in more of this like striving posture, I'll slow down and think, this is a gift. Like I can play with this. Like I can implement my creativity. I can slow it down a bit. I can be here right now. Like I know this is the task at hand. I'm going to get through it, but let's not just try to get through it. Let's really like be in it. And it becomes playful. And so I think it's such a gift to be able to take the pillars and apply them to life regularly and not compartmentalize of like, okay, Saturday I play, it's date night, and it's like, no, we can move, even in our work clothes, we can, and so I think it's an opportunity to implement these other areas of our life without compartmentalizing them and even allow the Lord to be there. And I think that's a key that happened for me in the very beginning where I had Jesus like in a box. And it wasn't because I was trying to box him out of certain areas of my life. It was more that I didn't know how to invite him into my relationships. I didn't know how to invite him into my meals. I didn't know how to invite him into the way I moved my body. Like I didn't, and it was all rooted in my identity. It was all rooted in my relationship with him. And once that opened up, it was like, well, how can he not be a part of these things? Like this is it. So I think when we stop compartmentalizing the Lord, the pillars also get to open up into all parts of our life and we can start living them out. And it's a gift.
So for someone listening, they're saying, okay, I want that to be my reality, but how do I invite the Lord into my nutrition, or how do I invite the Lord into my like physical movement, functional movement? Can you give us just a couple tips from just your content and just through your years of experience?
Sure. I think one thing to consider first is that if we want to approach anything through the lens of the Lord, we have to know him. We have to have a relationship with him. And so that could feel overwhelming for someone who is just starting. But just take the first step. And even if it's a lousy first step, just take it in. We have to have prayer time. And if you want a relationship with anybody, you have to spend time with them. And so minimally, I say half an hour, but we could start even smaller and it doesn't have to be an adoration. I think it's the best place to start in his presence with the Lord. It could certainly be in your home if need be. But the opportunity to be in the Lord's presence or just to invite him into your presence, if that's the best you can do, is essential in order to really approach our health with him. And like, he wants to do this. He gives us free will and he's so patient and he's so gentle. And so he's sort of waiting for us to say, okay, I want you to do this too. Cause I want to live better. Cause I know you made me this way. And I know I can feel better. I didn't have to feel overwhelmed. And so I think I know that is the first step for sure. And then it's from there when we reorient our focus and our identity that we get to say, well, how would I eat if I remembered that I'm a beloved daughter or son of Christ? Like I would eat food that really nourished the gift that I received in my body, and that would allow me to stay vibrant and energetic and healthy, and I would eat foods that are delicious, that have like nourishment, and that's just innate. Like that's not just from what we learn, like that is just our innate being that would choose that. And we how would I sleep? Well, I would rest because I know that this is how I would want to treat my body. Like so I we say very candidly, you don't really need reform if you would live in a place where, and we don't want people to need it. It's certainly a channel where we can help you, and we want to help you, and we have helped thousands of people now. It is learning how to reorient your life so that we're living and allowing the Lord to inform how we manage our stress, how we work, how we relate to other people. And in order to do that, we have to like hit pause on a lot of things. And sometimes you can only work with one pillar at a time. And that's hard. That's a cross in itself, because once you get to know them, and I'm sure people even listening are like, yes, I want to play more and I want to eat well. And it's like, okay, but we have to start with the first thing has to be first. And that is absolutely with the Lord.
Yeah. And as you were talking, I was just remembering one of the videos that I watched that you gave. You talked about simplifying our lives, and you included a prayer by Padre Pio, and I'd never heard that prayer before, and I just thought that was so key. Can you just share a little bit with those listening why it's important to simplify?
Yeah, I think in order to simplify, or in order to reform your life, we need to simplify. I think that's the best way to put it. And so we have to have space in our life. And I mean that in the sense of like headspace, emotional space, heart space, and like our environment is going to be a reflection of what's happening interiorly. It's going to affect our interior. And so space can really mean internal or external. And in the beginning, when there's a knowingness, Valentina, of I want to live this way. I want the Lord to be at the center of my life. I want to be healthier. I want to be holy. I want to be happy. These are all things people want. We need a little space with Him to navigate which way is up and down and left and right, and where He wants us to start. Usually we start where we want to start. And so in order to cultivate more space and to increase our capacity to make these changes and to have a heightened awareness of what we need to do, and to even know, well, what's the current state of my body and what's the current state of my soul, we have to simplify, and we have to pare down, and even pare down more than you think you have to pare down. And I think people are afraid of space, because that's when like the truth comes to the surface. That's where all of a sudden, when our calendar isn't full, it's like, well, we have to actually face ourselves, or face trauma. And I say that with a very gentle heart. And I think most people are busy as a response to things that haven't really been dealt with. And so it's a bit of a response in that way, a trauma response. And so I do think that simplifying is imperative to really reforming, because we need space in order to allow the Lord room to lead us. And so it's one of the first steps that we invite people to take in their reformation in general.
Yeah, and I just wanted to speak to that. So my husband's in the military, and so we recently moved temporarily somewhere else, and then came back, and we were in this location, and we were there, and we didn't have most of our things, and we didn't have a very full calendar at all. We just had the daily. He went to school, and I took care of our child, and just life was very simple, and it was just remarkable. Just in that space, in that time, I had a lot of time to pray. We had like a really set routine, and it was just so beautiful. And I was like, wow, life actually goes a lot smoother when I have less things to do on my calendar. Shocker.
Yeah, I don't think we allow ourselves times to process our feelings, our day to day, the gift of the Lord's hand in our lives. And, it's so interesting to me because we all desire to know his will, and we innately want to live his will, but we won't let go of the things that are getting in our way, that are distracting us from knowing his will. And so we want to hear his voice. We want to be guided. We want to be directed. We want to be aligned. But there's sometimes this unwillingness to let go of the distractions that are blocking us from being able to receive that. And so there needs to be a releasing in order to receive. And that even means with health, like we have to release habits and behaviors, again, thought processes, sometimes relationships, sometimes jobs. Like there's lots of things that sometimes we have to release in order to receive healing or a renewed relationship with him. But again, this doesn't happen overnight. It just happens with this first, like, it's like Our Lady's first yes. Like, she didn't know how this was going to happen. I mean, she said, how can this be? Like, this is impossible. And it's not impossible. It's just that we have to create that space for the Lord to enter into our lives in a way that he intends to.
Yeah. And so, looking at your journey through reform, what have been some of the overarching fruit, and what have been some of the challenges of creating this Catholic apostolate? And then with that, I'll pause. Go ahead.
I mean, the greatest joy is journeying with so many people from all over the world. It's a bit of a cross sometimes to be virtual, in that I'm a people person, and connecting in person, there's no greater thing. But it's also allowed us to connect with thousands of people from so many countries all over the globe, all different walks of life, all different cultures, all different faiths. I mean, it is just a tremendous gift. I have such an amazing team, and so there's just a really beautiful sisterhood in that, and also this ability to be in a mission that's been entrusted to us in all various ways, to use our charisms and our gifts to serve. That is just amazing. I would say that the challenge is that it's impossible to lead reform without walking the walk. And so there has to be this constant balance of paring down and paring back, and taking an honest assessment of my own well-being, physically and spiritually, and having the grace, by the grace of God, to hold boundaries with myself more than anything, to be able to authentically live this out, but also to be able to allow the Lord to continue to steer the ship, and not me. I want to be a vessel, and to go where he leads. And there needs to be a capacity to know where he wants us to go, and also the space then for him in this. And so that is, that's a blessing, and it's also a challenge, in a lot of ways, but it's a beautiful challenge, one that I'm willing to continue taking. Yeah.
Okay. So just want to switch gears a little bit. I think it was last year or the year before you went on the Camino.
I did.
So I would love for you to just share a little bit about your experience. I have a special place in my heart for the Camino. I lived in Spain for a short time, and I did a small part of the Camino. And so when I heard that you were going, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So how was your experience, and what prompted you to do it?
It's so funny. I can't even remember how we really decided. I just know that it was the summer of 22, and I think one of our reformers had committed, who also was a family friend, committed to going, and it sounded amazing. And it was one of these things of should we do that? And so Dr. Bridget and I were discerning some things in reform in general. And I thought, well, what better way than to go on a pilgrimage and have some space to do so? And so we were 2.5 or 3 months later walking. And so we walked 300 of the 500 miles, and we did so in about 3 weeks. And I still think about it every day. There's so many things. We wrote a blog I could share with you about the lessons that we unpacked. And I think we often laugh and say, if you want to know if you can work with somebody, walk the Camino with them, and you'll learn. Thank God we were successful in that together. But certainly there was such a gift of the healing nature, the healing power of nature, of being outside, the obedience and getting up and walking every day, and not knowing exactly how you're going to get somewhere, but knowing where you're going. We knew where we wanted to go. That was Santiago. We didn't exactly know how we were going to get there. So there are so many parallels. There was such a gift of the Camino providing for us, of just trusting that what we needed, we just brought our backpacks. We didn't have any plans. We made our reservations as we went. Sometimes there was no room at the inn and we had to keep walking. I mean, there was this really beautiful parallels. But it was one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. I one of my distinct memories of doing the Camino was I met this man. He was originally from Italy, and I had done it when I was in college. And I remember we were just walking. We happened to just be walking along next to each other, and he just looks at me. He's like, "Do you know Frank Sinatra?" I was like, "I love Frank Sinatra," and so then we just started singing one of his songs like at the top of our lungs. And I was like, "What? This is so crazy." But just the people that you meet and the openness and just the experiences that you have that you'll just never forget.
Absolutely. It's such a gift. I agree wholeheartedly. And we met such incredible friends and people along the way. And some people that we likely will never see again, but they were just little, angels sent along the way to walk with us for 5 minutes or 5 hours, and just such a gift.
That's awesome. So just as we wrap up, would just love for you to just to share what's the future of Reform. I know you have some changes happening and some really exciting things. So I'd just love for you to share that.
Sure. So one of the things actually that was inspired on the Camino was to have a place for people to encounter all that we teach at Reform through our course, Reform Online, in person, and specifically to encounter the Lord, and then the essence of Reform as an extension of their relationship with Him in adoration. And so we are pursuing a Eucharistic wellness center, a place where we hope to have adoration as often as possible, but also where food is grown and raised, and where there's opportunity to get really good quality sleep and to move your body and have lots of space in nature, certainly experience community, and there shouldn't be no stress there. But and so this is something where, as we continue to grow, we grew virtually. We just so desired to encounter the Lord in person with other people. There's nothing better than when we host retreats and we get to hug our reformers from near and far, people who have really made incredible changes. And so I moved from New York to Virginia about a year and a half ago, to pursue this next venture, and like the Camino, Valentina, we're on our way, and we'll be sharing more. So we ask for prayers. But we need some support, certainly in many areas, and we know that this is going to be a very blessed opportunity for us, but also for people to come away and rest their whole person. There's spas and there's sometimes retreats. There's sometimes spiritual retreats, but we're hoping to merge those two in a way where we can really rest in the Lord and rejuvenate our bodies and our souls together.
It sounds amazing.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, Jackie, if someone wanted to learn more about Reform and to learn more about your vision, where can they go?
We would love for anyone to visit our website. So it's reformwellness.co, and then our Instagram handle is at reform_wellness. And we share free content all the time on all of our wellness pillars, on spiritual formation. And we would be grateful for anyone who would want to follow along.
And I guess any last remarks that you wanted to share with anyone regarding just Reform, about the faith?
I would say go all in for Jesus. There's no better way. I think one of the things I always think back to is that I knew there was a better way and I waited to get curious about it, and all at the right time. And I think that he's ready for whoever's ready to open that door even just a little. So I would just encourage you to take the first step toward a closer relationship with him, and he'll take the reins from there.
Awesome. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, you too. What a joy to meet you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for listening. And remember, when you say yes to God, you change the world. God bless you and see you next time.